Welcome back. For those of you just tuning in, watching live coverage of NASA's SpaceX Crew 2 mission, a 6-month rotational mission to the International Space Station. My name is Andy Tran, a production supervisor here at SpaceX, and I'm joined by NASA's Leah Cheshire. Leah, how are you doing today?
Hey, Andy, I'm great. It's awesome to be here. What an exciting mission so far. I don't know about you, but I woke up extra early to watch that liftoff. Everything flawless. And if you're just joining us, the crew is currently finishing dinner and we'll be getting ready to go to bed.
To recap what has happened so far, it's certainly been an exciting day. With 4 astronauts in space right now. NASA's Shane Kimbrough, Megan MacArthur, and the European Space Agency astronaut Mom Pesce, and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Aki Hoshide. Early in the morning, they donned their spacesuits with the help of the suit technicians, said some final farewells, and hopped into Teslas, took a ride to Pad 39A launch pad, and then ingressed or entered the Dragon capsule Endeavour about an hour later. And then after that, we had a successful liftoff early out on the East Coast at 5:49 a.m. Eastern Time, a few minutes after liftoff. The stage booster, the same one that carried the crew astronauts to orbit last November. That booster went once again on our drone to course I love you and the Atlantic Ocean. And then shortly after that, the Dragon capsule separated from the top of the second stage and flew into space.
Immediately after the Dragon spacecraft separated from Falcon 9, it began what we call the activation and rendezvous phase of the mission. During this phase, Dragon configured for on-orbit operation, and it began what we call the activation and rendezvous phase of the mission. During this phase, Dragon configured for on-orbit operation, and it began what we call the apogee and perigee of the orbit, or the highest and lowest point over the Earth. That means the orbit is more of an ellipse rather than a perfect circle.
And the Dragon vehicle has already executed its first of many burns, which will gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the station. The first major burn was called the phase burn and was performed at the first apogee of the initial orbit and raised the Dragon's perigee to a higher altitude. Next up is an additional phase burn scheduled at 12:30 p.m. PST or 9:30 GMT, and that is based on what our orbital data is showing us.
And their initial phase burn was nominal. This is just Dragon's flight computers calculating it needs additional burns to get positioned for that rendezvous. So we'll have an additional out-of-plane burn, and that comes up at 5:14 p.m. Pacific time, I believe. And the next burn after that is based on that orbital data. Again, it's the boost burn that raises Dragon apogee, or the highest point in its orbit, to just an altitude of just 10 kilometers lower than the space station. It's followed about 45 minutes later by the close co-elliptic burn to push Dragon on orbit roughly co-elliptic with the space station. This means the crew will be about 10 kilometers lower than the station during their entire orbit around the Earth. The fourth maneuver is the burn, where we're raising Dragon's apogee, or the highest point of its orbit, just 2.5 kilometers below the station, and we round everything out with a final co-elliptic burn to once again maintain a constant orbit beneath the station, this time just 2.5 kilometers below.
And then after the burns are finished, we'll get into the approach, initiation, and final stages of Dragon's rendezvous with the space station. This is also where we start joint operations between Dragon Control Team here in Hawthorne and the Space Station Flight Controllers in Mission Control Houston. The teams will transition to integrated operations roughly 45 minutes prior to approach initiation. During approach, SpaceX flight computer controllers will work in tandem with the NASA team in Houston to activate and test out a number of systems on Dragon, including bidirectional communications with the station using the T2BT system, which stands for Common Communications for Visiting Vehicles, and sets up a data stream from Dragon to the station, giving yet another path for Dragon telemetry to come to ground and giving an additional command capability to astronauts aboard the station. They also maneuver Dragon to the proper altitude and initialize the navigation sensors used for the methodical approach to the station.
Tomorrow at approximately 12:40 a.m. Pacific, or 7:40 GMT, Draco thrusters on Dragon will fire for the approach initiation burn when Dragon is about 2.5 kilometers below the station and just about 7 kilometers behind it. This will swing Dragon up until it is about 400 meters directly below the station. This maneuver will also move Dragon inside one of 2 safety zones around the station that requires a set of go, no-go holes with the different control teams. The first zone is called the approach ellipsoid. This is an imaginary shape measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers, a large three-dimensional oval essentially. And before Dragon is given permission to move inside that ellipsoid, you might hear it called the AE. It's configured to be on what is known as a 24-hour safe trajectory. And that means if Dragon lost all control to its thrusters for some reason, it would be at least 24 hours before its trajectory would move inside that approach ellipsoid.
Once Dragon arrives at 400 meters below the station, it will be at waypoint 0, which is the first checkpoint during our approach. The vehicle can hold at 400 meters or continue on if all system checkouts to approach waypoint 1 if everything looks good. At this point, the team will do a go, no-go for Dragon to move inside the keep-out sphere, yet another zone that consists of an imaginary sphere around the station, this time with a radius of 200 meters. It's another chance to confirm all guidance, navigation, and control systems are working correctly on Dragon before moving closer to the station, and carries a requirement similar to the approach ellipsoid that Dragon's orbital trajectory would not bring it inside that sphere if control were to somehow be lost, but this time only for 4 orbits or about 6 hours instead of the 24 of the approach ellipsoid.
So Dragon's move from waypoint 0 to waypoint 1 will swing it up and out in front of the station, arriving at a distance of approximately 220 meters. At this point, it is on what we call the docking axis, essentially meaning it's directly in front of its docking port. The crew is headed to the most forward port on the space station today, called the Node 2 forward port, and that's where Dragon docked for both of demonstration missions, Demo 1 without crew in early 2019, and Demo 2 with Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley in 2020, as well as Crew 1's initial docking last November. It's where one of 2 international docking docks is located. These were installed for new commercial spacecraft flights and any other future spacecraft that also use the International Docking Standard.
Once Dragon is only 20 meters away at waypoint 2, the spacecraft then focuses on aligning its docking systems with a docking adapter. Dragon will then fly in and make contact with the International Docking Adapter, giving us what we call a soft capture. The soft capturing then retracts until sensors indicate it's time for hooks to drive in place to give us a hard capture and firmly secure Dragon to the station. Then it's time for leak checks and hatch open, which currently timeline to come about 2 hours following docking.
So a lot of exciting action still to come. We're glad that you're joining us today. And there is another player in this mission today as well, and that is Mission Control Houston. So for an update from the International Space Station Flight Control Room, let's toss it over to Shaniqua.
Thanks, Andy and Leah. Welcome back to Mission Control Houston. We are in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where the Orbit 2 team, led by Flight Director Audie Boulos, has taken the reins. Crew 2 Flight Director Scott Stover, who led the integrated NASA and SpaceX operations team in planning for the mission, will begin tomorrow for Dragon's approach and docking. Throughout the mission, you will see different flight control rooms. This is NASA's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. To keep the team safe and healthy, we will switch out room for cleaning in between shifts. Expedition 65 is currently aboard the International Space Station, including Crew 1 astronauts Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, and Shannon Walker of NASA, and JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi. They arrived back in November of 2020 and are set to come home next week. Also aboard the station is NASA astronaut Mark Van Dyke, Oleg Novitsky, and Fyodor Dubrov of Roscosmos, who recently arrived to the space station just last week aboard the Soyuz spacecraft. With the addition of Crew 2, we'll have 11 people on board the station for a short period of time. Also, we have 5 spaceships that are currently attached to the space station, including SpaceX Crew Dragon Resilience, the Northrop Grumman Cygnus cargo craft, and Russia's Press-75 and 77 resupply ships, and the Soyuz S-18 cruise ship. And a lot of preparations have taken place to prepare the orbiting lab for Crew 2's arrival. In the days leading up to docking, the crew moved stowage around to make sure the docking hatchways were clear and supplies were ready for Crew 2. The morning of docking, the station crew will set up laptops to allow them to monitor Dragon's approach. These tools will be mirrored down to the ground for controllers to see as well. NASA astronaut Victor Glover will be prime or the lead for monitoring Dragon's approach, while Commander Shannon Walker will continue science, as the International Space Station is first and foremost a laboratory. Mike Hopkins will finish cleaning node 2, or the Harmony module, in preparation for Crew 2's arrival. And earlier this morning, Victor Glover and Soichi Noguchi finished installing crew alternative sleep accommodations for CASAs to provide additional crew quarters on board. 11 people and only 7 permanent crew quarters on the International Space Station, some of the crew will also sleep inside their Dragon spacecraft. Crew Dragon Resilience has been home for Mike Hopkins since the start of his stay aboard the station. One astronaut will also sleep in Endeavour once it is docked. The remaining taking out temporary campout locations, likely in the station's Kibo module or the U.S. airlock. As approach and docking continues, flight controllers on the ground here in Mission Control will also begin further preparations. Around 3 hours prior to docking, flight controllers will begin to feather the ISS solar arrays. This is a multi-step process that is spaced out until Dragon is on docking access. But solar alpha refrigerants will be parked and locked. 4 the gimbal assemblies, or BGAs, will be parked, with 2 of those also being latched. The other 4 BGAs will continue to track the sun to provide continuous power to the International Space Station. This configuration is designed to protect the arrays from thruster trails or plumes as Dragon approaches. Around 1.5 hours prior to docking, we will hand over station attitude control from the U.S. gyroscopes to Russian thrusters. This substation can hold a finer attitude control while Dragon approaches. Once soft lock is complete, we will hand over attitude control back to the U.S. gyroscopes so that thrusters are not firing while driving hard capture system hooks. Around 1 hour prior to docking, we will configure the space station and Dragon radios to enable voice communications between the vehicles. This will give us what you'll hear referred to as the big loop, mixing communication between Dragon, the station, and the ground. Following hard capture, the ISS crew will pressurize the vestibule between the station and the Dragon. Flight controllers will then perform thermal stabilization and leak checks prior to opening the ISS PMA hatch and the Dragon forward hatch. The total time between contact for hatches to open will be approximately 2 hours. After docking and hatch opening, the ISS crew will welcome Crew 2 aboard the station. We are doing what is called a direct handover, which just means a new crew of astronauts arrives at station before another crew departs. It will only last a few days, but we'll have 11 people on board the station. The record for the most astronauts aboard the station was set several times during the Space Shuttle program, when we had as many as 13 for short periods of time. The day before the Crew 1 departure, NASA astronaut Shannon Walker will hand over station command to Jet astronaut Aki Hoshide, who will lead the Expedition 65 crew. Hoshide will be the second astronaut from the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency to lead to